Hi, my name is John Light, and I've spent over 20 years working throughout all corners of the recruiting world. Our podcast, Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool, is a resource to help you stay afloat and get ahead of your competition. Hi, and welcome to Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. I'm here today with Dave Todaro, the CEO, founder, and really the chief pilot in a sense there for a company called Ascendle, does software development and really resides at the intersection of talent and software, project management, things that make the world go round. Dave, thanks so much for joining us here on Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool.
Absolutely, John. Thank you.
Now, so I got a little shot in there about being, the chief pilot as well. And I'm sure we'll touch on that, but I'd love if we could get started by kind of going through where you started. And it doesn't have to be super detailed, but kind of take us on the journey. And I'm especially interested, because when you look at Ascendle on LinkedIn, the company page, the thing that jumped out to me is in the about section, basically is that if we don't deliver value, our work is free. And look, I've been around a lot of service companies over the years. That's a strong statement. That takes a lot of confidence. So tell us how you got there.
Absolutely. So I was always interested in technology. I was fortunate enough to have a grade school teacher that had a computer in the classroom, and that was a long time ago. So that was not quite as popular as it
was.
Was
it an Apple IIe?
It was actually a TRS-80 Model 3.
Oh yeah, with the tapes.
Oh yes, absolutely. If that's dating myself, this was a highly advanced version. It had a 5.25 inch floppy drive. So I got exposed to that and dove right in and started programming and fell in love right away. So that really started a lifetime of love of coding. And it also tied into a little bit later on delivering value because my father was a camp director. He was the director of an overnight camp for boys and for families. And I would watch him sitting at the dining room table with the typewriter, typing the 3-part carbon copy registration forms for the entire summer. Yeah, so
was it white, pink, or white, green, and goldenrod, or whatever the colors were?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yep. So I looked at that and I thought, well, there must be a better way to do this. And so I got out my trusty, then it was a Commodore 64. And
progressive.
Figured out how to, yes, you're going very advanced now from the TRS-80 to the Commodore 64. And just wrote a little database program where we could put all that registration information in and got my trusty dot matrix printer, sat it next to the typewriter on the dining room table and showed him how he could put the stuff in and press one button and it would zip out that 3-part form.
Yeah.
And saved him a ton of time. So that was sort of the first inkling at age 13 of tying this technology love to actually solving people's problems. And I think at the end of the day, every programmer certainly loves solving problems, but they love delivering something that users find exciting, valuable, entertaining if you're in games.
Right.
But that to me kind of set me down the path of tying technology to delivering value.
Kidding. At 13 to boot. I've got a 13-year-old. I got a 12 and a 13-year-old, and they'll try. One of them tried to write a book of jokes. They weren't that funny. But we laughed, in the moment. You don't want to discourage him or anything, but
there you go. A for effort.
A for effort, baby. Yeah. You gotta, if a kid shows a spark like you did there, you got to do something to encourage it, right? Because that may be a little bit out of the norm, right? Most kids are like, well, give me a football or give me a pad and let me draw and be artistic and while away the time. Or now it's like, give me an Xbox or whatever it might be. And yet here you were sitting going, hey man, how do I help him out? So that's pretty cool, Dave. Good on you. And it sounds like too, of course, when you look on your company website, it's carried through to your values at Ascendle. So I'm the being on time, discipline, hard work, delivering value. Tell us a little bit about Ascendle, because I mean, that's been your baby now for quite a while.
Yes, it has. So just fast forwarding, I ended up writing a few different camper registration systems for the Boston YMCA in high school. Went to school for engineering, but really kind of had that software bug. And so got out of college, continued with some consulting work, and then met a gentleman who had started a company, and I ended up being his technical co-founder and built that company over the course of 18 years. So we built software for the construction industry. A bunch of different products, a bunch of different teams, and lots of trials and tribulations as we grew that company. This was pre-Agile. So we were trying to figure out how to manage this process. Then I discovered Agile about 15 or 16 years ago. And then I exited that company, sold to my partner, and started Ascendle now almost 11 years ago. And the charter for Ascendle was to be helpful, specifically be helpful to these same software folks that are having their own struggles with getting their arms around how do we work this intersection, like you said, of technology and people. How do we orchestrate people to understand what it is that our customers want, and then get our daily work aligning with that and building high quality software? So I started Ascendle with that charter in mind. Early on, it was just sort of straight consulting, helping companies figure out how to build development teams, figure out how to hire folks, participating in the hiring process. Inevitably, they would run into challenges and frustration. And finally, they said, Dave, can you just do this? Can you just put a team in place and make this happen? And that started us down the path of building teams. So today we do that combination of doing strategic consulting with software companies, helping them figure out, all right, how do we chase down these three elusive goals that seem to be coming up over and over again? How do I get my teams to build the product that our customers actually want and are going to drive our business forward?
Right.
How do I get our teams to do that as quickly and predictably as possible? And finally, most and very important, is how do we do that at a high level of quality? So we both work with companies to help them figure out how to do that. And then a lot of times our companies have more work than their teams can handle. So we also still put development teams in place to help them out.
Wow.
But it is all, at the end of the day, about delivering business value.
Yeah. Well, I think, like him or dislike him, Bill Gates is credited with saying that all companies are tech companies now. And so being able to successfully live at that intersection, I think, is only going to become more critical. It's already critical. I think it's only become more critical as we go forward. I was listening to someone the other day who's been, I would say he's in the HR tech space. I'd say he's probably been on the front edge of machine learning and Gen AI applications within this ATS universe he lives in. And I remember him talking about, well, what a lot of these other people are talking about in the market isn't real AI. And they haven't really applied AI to a process. And, he seemed very, very defensive around AI. Now, you and I know AI has been around. The theory of AI has been around a long time, since way before us, way before the Commodore 64 for sure, back in the 50s.
Absolutely. Yes. Since the 50s. Exactly.
Yeah. And, machine learning is AI. But I consider it, you probably resonates with you. It's a static thing. It's not dynamic and producing output like generative AI is, which is the new kid on the block. We're still a long way from theory of the mind, or artificial general intelligence. That is hopefully post my demise. I don't know if I want to deal with all of that. That goes with it. But where we stand today, he seemed very defensive. Hey, this takes a lot of time, and LLMs take forever to develop, and this and this and that. And I look around the market, I'm thinking, man, some of these things they're popping out just constantly. There's something new. There's another wrinkle. There's another fold. There's another corner to go around. And I've maintained for a while that with AI and the applications of AI are more of a frontier today than developing it, if that makes sense. versus there are plenty of LLMs to build on. And there'll be more popping up all the time. There's just that trend, that impetus is in motion, and you know how it is. Objects and motions tend to stay in motion. And I think so the application is so critical. And I think right now there are probably more executives, more mom and pops, more executives at the bigger companies who are really digging into the idea that, you know what, a part of our core business function, operations, can revolve around how do we apply AI to operations, to sales, to HR, to marketing, so on and so forth. And do we buy or build? And
Exactly.
I think the need for understanding how to develop quality software, what good looks like, I think it's only going to increase. It's one of the reasons I was excited to talk with you, because how do you handle that? Because you're going to have people come to you and say, hey, yeah, we've never developed zippity doo-dah, but we recognize that if we don't, we're at risk of being a buyer to someone else's innovation, or we're at risk of being left behind by the market.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, I think around AI, and particularly generative AI, this sort of new generation that was kicked off by ChatGPT just over a year ago. It seems hard to believe it's only been
Feels like it's been a decade.
year since. Yeah, hasn't it? And we usually get two questions. One is, how do I get some of that stuff in my product? And the second question is, can I get rid of some developers and just have this AI, write the code? Usually that's not, necessarily the technical leaders. That's more of the business leaders, and their intentions are pure.
Their intentions are good, but can you tell us
really
what stuff is?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. What is this stuff of which you speak? And I think that comes full circle back to the idea of value. Well, what value are we going to deliver?
Right.
And of course, in the case of having a chat interface to your product, chat UX, and the like, if all of your competition starts implementing that and you don't have it, now that is going to be a problem. But I think we also need to look at, well, what is the real value that we can deliver to our customers? And there are lots of use cases that we can look at with generative AI that does deliver a lot of value. I think what we need to be careful about is just to do a little bit of pressure testing around that and just think through, well, is this in fact going to deliver value to my customer? Because although there are already a ton of tools, Microsoft has very aggressively rolled out a bunch of tooling within its Azure cloud that leverages OpenAI's technology. Microsoft is a big investor in OpenAI, very forward-looking on Bill Gates and the team's part. So how do we actually apply this? Because it's not free. It's not, I can't snap my fingers and tomorrow we have a generative chat interface into our software. We still need to think through how exactly are we going to integrate that. And it still requires coding and building. So there's so many ideas that are floating around. We need to still, I like to say, ruthlessly prioritize because we don't have unlimited funding, but there are lots of opportunities. And looking at how we can build some capabilities that give our customers and our users a deeper experience with our product.
Okay.
The way that I think about generative AI today is it's like having a really fast research assistant.
No, it's a good way of looking at
as you integrate that capability in your product, it could be, well, I have a really fast assistant that knows how to use this software that I've bought from our clients. So I think we look at it like that. If we always keep the end user in mind, then we're going to be thinking about how to drive value to them, and ride that difference between something shiny and neat. Neat to me is a 4-letter word versus something that's delivering true value to our customers.
Neat is a 4-letter word. Shiny is not a 4-letter word. But a lot of people have shiny object
is not
syndrome.
A 4-letter word.
I think there's an E in there, right?
Yes. Yes, this is cool.
Look, we can spell it however we want to. That's why the American Revolution was fought, so we could do what we wanted to with the English language. Look what we do. I'm in Texas, and we make contractions out of everything and just create words out of whole cloth. it's part of the landscape here. But, this idea of delivering value to the end user, I grew up in an environment where it was drilled into me that you always begin with the end in mind. And if you want to get someplace, you need to define what that end looks like, and in this case, what the product would look like, for example, and then figure out, okay, nowadays that's future state. Here's current state. What's it going to take to get there? And a lot of companies, I think, haven't really identified a core set of problems that they could potentially address with an AI application, a tool, or maybe it calls for ML versus a Gen AI application of some kind. So
True.
I think one of the big challenges is, if you're a business leader, is understanding the problem you're trying to address. And in my opinion, I'm just a guy sitting here. I think a problem well defined is a problem that's a whole lot easier to solve than one that's got some ambiguity to it, that doesn't address a known issue. And so I wonder, if you're a business leader, how do you go about determining which problems should be solved with it versus ones that ought to be maybe either left alone or solved with something else?
There's a potentially oversimplified answer to that, and that's talk to your customers, because you may be spending 2 hours a day with your leadership team talking about what to do with this AI thing. While in the meantime, your customers are thinking, your product's too slow. It doesn't do what I want. It's too buggy. Your customers may have a completely different perspective, even to the point of you talking about, well, we're going to embark on this new AI initiative. Your customers may be looking around thinking, why the heck are they talking about AI when they can't even get the basics working? So I think that all of us in business, we can fall into the trap of forgetting who's paying the bills. And especially in today's virtual climate, understanding truly what your customers want. So I would say if I was a business leader that owned a software company or, a SaaS company, I think as I'm having these conversations around AI, I would first think, when's the last time I hopped on a plane and I went and I saw our top 10 customers and just spent a couple of hours watching their people use my software, taking them out to dinner and really listening to them, asking them, well, why do you use our software? What do you get out of it? What problems are you solving? And what can I do better? And see what they say. They may be saying, well, geez, if you could put that, generative AI thing in there, that would be amazing. But my guess is there's a 90% chance, it's a 90% chance they're going to be asking about a few other things. Now, as you're looking ahead, and especially, there's always a competitive landscape, AI is not something that you're necessarily going to just ignore and put on the back burner.
Right.
But I think it's easy to get really fired up about the new shiny object at the expense of your customers. And guess what? You're not going to have, if you ignore your customers, you're not going to have a company anymore. So you need to strike that balance between making sure you understand what are my real problems as perceived by my customers. And there may be none. They may say, oh my God, this product is amazing. You guys have spent the last 20 years listening to us and putting absolutely everything in there that we need. It's fast. It's rock solid. Yes, AI would be awesome. But for all too many of our clients, that's not what they would hear as they talk to their customers. They would, here's my laundry list of stuff that I've been collecting for the past 5 years that I feel like you guys haven't been listening and you guys are not responsive. And so maybe fix the stuff that I've been asking about for 5 years before this new stuff. And again, you're going to have to strike a balance, but don't dive into the new shiny AI things at the expense of your customers.
No, that's 100% fantastic advice. And I know you started it off with a caveat, well, maybe this is a little oversimplifying it, but it's not. I mean, the basics are still the basics. The fundamentals are still the fundamentals when it comes to business, when it comes to sales and all this other fun stuff. I'm curious, Dave, when you look around the market, I mean, if there was one or two key skills that you would recommend for people to say over the next 3 to 5 years, to upskill or reskill, or even if they're saying college or they're going through some sort of training program, what would be ideal to help them adapt to this technology? And I put it that way, to this technology, not to AI per se, because AI has been lurking in the shadows and on our shoulders for quite a while, just in the ML form. But
Sure.
But I'm thinking in terms of, I've been reading a lot about, there's a lot of, let's just call it blue collar work that's not going to be impacted much at all by AI. You're not going to replace your HVAC repair person or your plumber yet. I mean, robots aren't that far along, but, and there are a lot of other places out there where you can't replace a set of human hands doing a job. But on the white collar side, there are a lot of areas, I think maybe 6 months ago, people were going, AI is not going to replace this. And now that as it keeps kind of advancing by these leaps, I think some people are sitting back going, wait a second, I might need a CFO or a CPA to sign off on financials, another set of human eyes, but I might not need AP clerks. I might not need staff accountants. I might not need an FP&A function populated with humans. I might not need a paralegal. I might not need, you'll write down the list where this is going, because so much knowledge is there. But you and I know one of the key gaps in AI is it doesn't create anything novel. It synthesizes. As long as you're synthesizing and not relying on intuition and years of judgment, you can get away with that. But if you were in that environment looking at it from an employment perspective, and you're in one of these areas that, man, they could replace or displace me, what are a couple of things you would recommend that would be helpful for people to learn in terms of skills?
Absolutely. So my answer will be biased towards software, since that's my world.
Totally okay.
What I would do, so if I'm sitting here and actually my college junior was asking me a very similar question in terms of what I would lean into. I think what I would do if it was me would be, I would focus on three things. I would learn more about generative AI, keep up with what OpenAI is doing, sign up for a newsletter. This technology is changing on a weekly basis. So if I can keep up with what's going on and understand it and use it and learn about it and think about what implication it has, then I think I'm going to be better equipped for this world. Generative AI is not going to be going away. And more people are going to be trying to figure out, well, how do I actually use this? So you've probably heard the term prompt engineering. I think that's a very specialized piece, but I think just in general, just be aware of what's going on in the world of generative AI. That's the first recommendation I would have. The second recommendation I would have on the technical side of things is spend some time with Microsoft, Azure, and AWS. Just look at their marketing materials. Just read through every single service that those cloud infrastructures provide and understand the why behind doing this. So, funny story. When I was a little kid, I used to love looking at mail order catalogs back in the day when they had the,
everybody did back then.
We still get a few of them in the mail, right? But think about what a print catalog gave you. It gave you a picture, it gave you a description, it gave you the name, it explained what the benefit was, and you understood how much it cost. So you could learn a lot about a subject just by reading a mail order catalog around that subject. That's the way that I view going into Azure and AWS. Read the mail order catalog equivalent, which is, what is this service? What is it called? What does it do? How much does it cost? If you had a basic understanding of every single service that Azure and AWS offer as a technologist, you're going to be miles ahead of someone who doesn't. And the reason for that is that contemporary software development, the number one thing that we do with our clients is we listen to their problems and we go to Microsoft Azure or AWS and we figure out, what have those companies spent billions of dollars building for us already that we don't have to build? We just have to leverage. So today's software engineering is not writing everything from scratch. It's stitching together a bunch of pre-built components that are going to deliver a result. So that's the second thing I would do. The third thing I would do is I would learn about working with people, because there is one constant that is never going to go away, which is you need to be able to work with other people. You need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to coordinate, and you need to be able to understand what are the frameworks that help people with that task, whether it's Scrum on the technical side of things or some other framework. That's the third thing that I would do, is just understand that. And it took me a long time to learn this. I wrote a 500-page book on Scrum and all the things that you need in addition to the 17-page Scrum guide to actually make all the pieces work. But just understanding the fundamentals of that, I would go read the Scrum guide if you haven't. And I would go read the Agile Manifesto and the 12 principles that support the Agile Manifesto, because they were created for software, but those principles can be applied to any group of individuals that have the need to prioritize a to-do list and deliver a specific result, which talks to many, many people, regardless of industry, regardless of technology.
It's problem solving, right? I mean, with a group.
Absolutely.
And so what I'm hearing, and correct me if I heard this wrong, but this is just to kind of summarize. Yeah, AI is here. Gen AI is here to stay. It's going to impact everything, everybody, one way or the other, to one extent or the other. But the fundamentals are still the same. Be aware of technology, understand it, know how to work with other people and do it well. And really understand with clarity what problems are out there, and how to approach them. Because that approach doesn't change, and that's solving a problem is still solving a problem. Or as I heard my dad used to put it growing up, he said, math is still, well, Dad, what is math? And why do I have to take so much of it? And he'd tell me, because it's a language, and it's not even your second language, son. It's really bad. You need to improve on that. Oh, yes, sir. And we did over time. It was not unpainful. It was not painless, I should say. But tell me a little bit about, and we're kind of approaching this talent thing, because we talk a lot about the intersection of tech and talent in your career path or your company and all this, because that's, driving the tech talent pool. Tell me a little bit about what you do for talent and how you help people along in their careers from the Ascendle perspective. Because what you do is, in assembling these project teams and putting stuff together, you're doing a lot of knowledge transfer. And sometimes you end up transferring people, I'm sure, to help embed the historicity with a client. But just going back and being able to reinvent that knowledge mass and enough people on your side of the equation to effectively help and deliver value on the client side, I find that very intriguing. I find that very impressive because a lot of companies, especially smaller companies, Dave, they don't put enough into their people in terms of development. And some of that's because they haven't taken the time to understand what that should look like and how it should go, what the pace ought to be. And there's some companies have a fear of, well, this person's going to leave in 2 years anyway, so why should I invest more in them? But I got a hunch you probably don't have as much of that fear residing in how you do things.
No, we don't. I think it comes down to the classic three of people, process, and tools. And I think a lot of companies make the mistake of overemphasizing one or maybe two and then sort of de-emphasize the others. So for example, well, we're just going to put a bunch of tools in place and we don't need to worry about having, good people. We don't need to worry about developing them. We don't need to worry about having a solid process. Or we're going to have a process and, we're just going to figure out how to work that process, or we're just going to hire the best possible people in the world and then they're just going to magically know how to produce a result. And then, so there's problems with all three of those. That last one I actually did at my former company. We hired amazing people. We had a very heavy reliance on what was in everyone's head. And then if someone moved on to a different opportunity, or back then moved locations because we didn't have the virtual world that we have today,
kind of host.
and now all that knowledge would sort of evaporate with them.
Yeah.
So I think what's important is to make sure that we balance all three of those things. So for us, we hire really solid people. We focus on developing our people. We focus on training, upskilling, mentoring, apprenticing with other teams that are doing more advanced things or other people that are doing more advanced things. We have a very disciplined process. We use everything that's in my book all day, every day. Plus, we have another huge Confluence space that has documentation around everything. And we're still working it. We're still saying, you know what, we can do that a little bit better, or we don't have a process yet to make this repeatable. And then finally, we use the best tools that we can find, whether it's, the project management tools such as Jira and Confluence, or other tools that help us with our people or our time tracking or our project planning or just managing the organization. So, and we're certainly not perfect at it, but we do focus on all three of those pillars: people, process, and tools, and try to keep them all balanced and even. And it is a continuous process. It's a continuous process of developing our folks. For us, learning in the context of the daily challenges that come from our clients is always immensely valuable. And we get together. I just got off a call. I have office hours 2 days a week where it's not just me giving advice, but it's our team members coming together and talking about challenges. Right. Hey, have we ever run into this at a client? Well, no, that's a new one. What have you guys done so far to address that challenge? Well, we tried this. Okay. Well, what about this other idea? And we come together and we collaborate around those ideas. So we're always continually inventing. And that's the other thing, is that people are so important because we can't write a process for every possible thing that's going to happen. We could write 100,000 pages and there's still would be something that comes up.
Yeah.
It's just still not going to be enough. So having our folks really be consultants as opposed to just kind of blindly operating a process is super critical. And that's a continuous journey. It's a combination of us helping them, us exposing them to our clients and the challenges that we solve for our clients, and continually finding ways to elevate them within the organization. We are a professional services firm, so at the end of the day, we don't have a 16-level hierarchy that you can elevate through, and we have a very, very streamlined and lightweight management team, and of course, just about everyone in the company is still working on client projects in some form or fashion. So instead of the sort of vertical mobility that you'd have in a sort of a big corporate environment, we look to help upskill our team members with more and more competencies where they can tackle more and more things at different clients. And then they can also elevate into leadership roles where they help coordinate the work with our clients.
So I made a comment to someone the other day. We're talking about talent acquisition. How do you attract talent? And I stopped them and I said, well, really high quality talent acquisition for an existing organization starts with high quality talent management and talent retention. It starts with making what your value prop is more attractive. And what do you know? It positively impacts talent attraction of the right people at the right time, doing the right stuff for you. And it sounds like you're in that cycle. It's kind of a flywheel. Each depends on the other, which depends on the other, and takes a lot of energy and focus and discipline. There's no doubt. All right, I have to ask, and I don't know if we're going to end up with a pilot thing again or somewhere else, but the passion project. Dave, what besides work, or it could be in work, but what really gets you fired up, and where do you like to put your extra time and energy into?
Yeah, so the number one thing for me is the reason I started this company, which I mentioned earlier, which is to be helpful. That really is our core mission, is how can we be helpful? And we have our core values. You mentioned a few of those, such as deliver business value and embody extreme ownership and things like that. I think those are all contributors toward this idea of how do we be helpful? And that is really the mission that we start with. It's not how do we make as much money as possible? How do we conquer the world? How do we do this? How do we do that? It's how do we actually help people with, by and large, what they're frustrated with day in and day out, which is what we see as The business leaders and stakeholders are frustrated because they can't quite feel like they get out of their development team what they want. The development team is frustrated because they're working their butts off and they're feeling underappreciated because they're working so hard, but they somehow can't do anything right. This happens more often than not in many software development organizations or software product organizations. And so our goal, and I say somewhat tongue in cheek, but with a degree of seriousness, that our product is happiness.
Okay.
Happiness for those stakeholders that are frustrated about getting what they need out of the development teams. Happiness for the development teams that feel like they just, no matter how hard they work, they can't do anything right in many cases. So happiness is in fact our product. And because we're being helpful, we can generate happiness and have people excited to come to work every day and have those three key things addressed all the time. My team's building what our customers want. It's they're going fast and it's predictable and the quality is just awesome. You do those three things and your customers are going to love you and you're going to have a successful software company. But that's really what gets me fired up, is figuring out how do we be helpful to as many software companies as we can? How do we find more software companies that we can help? How do we tune our services in a way and our company structure in a way that we can deliver those services at as competitive a value proposition as we possibly can? So they're spending the lowest possible dollar amount to get the highest value, and we can still run a company and continue to grow. That's what gets me fired up and out of bed every day. And of course, there's also the fun things. I do enjoy getting out on the golf course, and I am a private pilot and fly my own plane. I was just up in Toronto visiting a client, spending a day with them, figuring out how it can be helpful to them, and was able to hop in the airplane and fly about an hour back and be back in time for another meeting in the afternoon.
There's nothing wrong with that, Dave. That's for sure. And I like this concept. How can we be helpful? One of the things I got into asking, and it took a hot minute to kind of make it a habit, always ask, hey, how can I help? Somebody presents a problem, and instead of offering a solution, and it could be a personal problem, a business problem, whatever, how can I help? How can I address this need that you have, be it for increased value, an answer to a homework problem, personal issue, whatever it might be? How can I help? That's finding ways to be helpful and give people something, the help they need, so they can get to happy. Which I kind of equate happy. And when I think happy, I think contentment. I think, all right, I can breathe. There's a burden lifted, and that's a heck of a message. That's a great message, Dave. I really appreciate you joining us today, sharing that with us, and I got a hunch that anybody listening to this is going to have some really, really key takeaways because you've been in the trenches for a long time and you've got lessons learned. And I think there's some great takeaways from this. So thank you so much for joining us.
You've been listening to Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. This podcast is sponsored by Sabretooth. Sabretooth improves the quality of hire and speeds up the time to fill specialized machine learning, data engineering, data science, and developer roles, stretching tech recruiting budgets further by bringing the precision of retained search and the speed of contingent search to the market in one complete solution. Find out more at sbr2th.com and follow me, John Light, on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.